increased, and therefore temptation can be increased. Sometimes computers get their own rooms in our homes today. And so when that's the case, a person can sit in front of his computer in a very private location, perhaps in a room by himself with the door closed, and therefore with no one else watching. That privacy can increase the opportunity for temptation to come to misuse the computer and to misuse the internet and chat rooms and blog sites and all kinds of things. So the privacy of the computer, the personal aspect of the computer, can increase the temptations for misuse. It's very easy in the way we use computers today to be alone with it. And even in situations where others may come into the room where we are, it's very easy to quickly hide what you're doing. Well, that increases temptation. So privacy is an issue that can easily be solved, incidentally, or at least can be lessened by having your computer in the busiest room of the house and have the screen on the computer placed in such a way that the screen is visible to those who come into that room, so that things are less hidden, and therefore the temptation to misuse it will decrease as well when you increase the possibility of what you're doing being seen by others. Well, there's another aspect of computers that make them somewhat dangerous, or at least the internet, that it can increase the temptation, and that is the idea of anonymity. The fact that online you can virtually be anonymous to those others with whom you are sharing information over the internet. Online you can be basically anyone you want to be. You can do things anonymously, at least as far as the others are concerned that with whom you're sharing information. We'll talk about the fact that really you're never alone on the computer and never anonymous as far as God's concerned, but we'll get to that point in a moment. But as far as the others are concerned, you can basically be anonymous. And so in a situation like that, while you personally might never physically get in your car and drive, for example, to an adult bookstore or an adult video store, and you might not go into a place and purchase pornographic magazines or movies or things like that. You might never do that physically for fear of being seen, but online it's very easy to do things anonymously that way, and so the temptation is increased. You might never walk up to a person, I hope you wouldn't, walk up to a person and take off your clothing and reveal yourself to someone. But online, you can place pictures and things of that sort and be somewhat anonymous to other people. So there are dangers inherent in the anonymity that can be a part of internet usage. And this anonymity can lead to experimentation, which again increases the danger and the potential for temptation. You can go to whatever site you want to, because ultimately, unless you tell them, nobody really knows your name. You can make up a name. You can change a lot about who you are online. And so this leads, incidentally, people who are generally very shy people, very reserved people in public settings, to be able to be anonymous online, and those who would under other circumstances be very shy and reserved can be exactly the opposite when they make themselves virtually anonymous online. And so you can see, hopefully, that these are the kinds of characteristics of the internet that can make it something that increases the temptation for misuse. Because you see, you can go online and be a person. You can change your name, you can change the way you look, you can change your gender, you can change your age, you can basically change anything and everything about you as those characteristics are revealed to others with whom you're sharing information. And so in some ways, you can completely hide who you are from them. And so these things are very, very important for us to consider. And then another thing, a final thing, the convenience of it. The things that are out there on the internet that are things that are evil and bad are very, very convenient. And so from the privacy aspect, the anonymity, and the convenience, all of those things working together just simply increase the opportunities for Satan to tempt us to misuse that very powerful tool. Now I want to turn our attention to the Scriptures and look at what the Bible has to say about our use of the internet. Now again, specifically, the internet's not mentioned in the Scriptures because it didn't exist at the time these things were originally written. But there are principles that would apply to our use of the World Wide Web. And I want to draw your attention to those things in the time we have remaining to hopefully help us to make sure we're not misusing that very powerful tool. So consider these points with me. First of all, remember that God's not confined to the first century. God is not stuck in the past. His Word still governs our conduct in the present, even our online conduct. And so these principles would certainly apply. Number one, remember that you are responsible for controlling what you focus your mind on. You are responsible for controlling what you focus your mind on. The Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, that we are to bring every thought into captivity unto the obedience of Christ. Now, can we do that while viewing pornography on the internet? While doing that, are we bringing every thought captive unto the obedience of Christ? Or are we basically trying to keep that activity from the Lord, that He might not know that we're doing it, though that really is not a possible thing to do. Perhaps that's what we're hoping. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, we have the important admonition about guarding our thoughts and the things that we are to really focus our minds on. Paul said, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Well, there are a lot of things that you can view on the internet that are not praiseworthy, that are not pure, that are not noble, that are not just. And so if we're responsible for meditating, for focusing our mind on those kinds of things, then that's going to affect what we look at online. Jesus in Matthew 5, verse 28 said, you've heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say unto you, every man that looks upon a woman to lust after her has committed adultery with her already in his heart. If we're looking at things online that we shouldn't, and lusting after pictures and video that we shouldn't be looking at, then we've committed sin. Matthew 5:28 has a direct application to our use of the internet. And so remembering that we are responsible for the things that we focus our minds on will help us to choose wisely what we use the internet for. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. Well, you can't keep your heart in good spiritual condition while at the same time misusing the World Wide Web. The second principle that we need to remember is this: we are also responsible for controlling what we say. We are responsible for controlling what we say, how we use our speech. And sometimes in chat rooms and on blog sites that are on the internet, people don't do that. They don't control their speech. And some that on those same sites claim to be Christians will use some of the most terrible language that you can imagine. Yet we find in Ephesians 5, verses 3 and following, Paul writing this, but fornication and all uncleanness